Welcome, Tommy.
喂，好，那我是可以讲中文，但是我中文没有很好，所以这一次的演讲我应该是会用英文来去做。对 ，So welcome everyone. So today's talk is going to be about building a custom linter using SwiftSyntax. So it's a bit technical, and I will introduce a bit about what actually linting is. So what you will expect from the talk, like in content-wise, so I will introduce a bit about what actually linting and formatting is, and how the linting tools are doing in Swift. And also I will introduce a bit of basic usage of SwiftSyntax and how does actually a syntax tree works. So in code-wise, I will try to do a small live demo about using SwiftSyntax with SwiftLint. And also, I will do build a linter, building completely solely from SwiftSyntax. And I also will have some benchmarking about what's the performance difference between using SwiftLint and also SwiftSyntax. There's repository available on GitHub, and the slides will be available later after the talk. And there's a QR code to scan or something like that. So after talking something you expect from me, so I would like to expect something from you, which is if you have never used Swift before, I hope you will get something similar concepts on how actually linting works and how does Swift actually handles linting or formatting. And if you have used Swift before, I hope you will find a new option to, apart from using SwiftLint, you can try to perform something more precise or something more a thorough linting process in Swift. Okay, so before we begin, so feel free to point out any mistakes. If you see on the slides, everyone will make mistakes. So, and feel free to ask any questions. 你可以用中文问的话也是 OK， 但是我演讲的语言是英文，所以我就主要是用英文来做演讲这样子。And have fun. So if you want to try the whole thing, actually, so if you see my talk description, there's a GitHub repository. It's a sample code, so you can have a look. And if you want to try, you can use VS Code and prepare for that. And also you have to know what actually Swiftly is. It's a version manager for Swift. And you also know how SPM, so Swift Package Manager, works. So in order to try out the things in here. Okay, so let's talk about what is actually linting. So instead of talking about how does linting work, coded by ChatGPT, so most likely a proper, like in every programming language, so they will have a three-step process. So you write some code, like you build a feature or build a function or something like that, and then you have installed some linter tool and to help you to check if there is anything wrong, right? So you install it inside the IDE, and so if there are any problems or any things that's not related to the rules, then it will like the linter tool will tell you that there are some errors. So you will try to fix that. Like you are typing your function having too many parameters, or maybe you are using a name that's too short. I guess that's very common for linter to tell you something like that. Or you can just use AI to fix it yourself, right? So actually where does linter works? So in most cases, I'm sure that you guys are very familiar with, like in normal compilers in different programming languages, they will help us to actually check if there's any problem already, like in compile time. So when you try to click Command B in Xcode, or maybe just try to build, clicking from the Visual Studio Code, the build button, so it will already check if there's any problem. So if there's problems, they will throw exceptions, and it will give us errors and something like that. So it helps you to catch bugs early, so you don't need to get your app crashed, like during when you're running your app. So it will help you to do something like that. And as you're writing code, so if there's any problems, the compiler will help you, the IDE will help you to know that, oh, there's some kind of issues. Like there's a typos on variable names, or there are potential errors that the application actually cannot know what kind of error is. Or maybe there is some kind of incomplete logic. so which may be missing some cases in switch or of an enum, and that compiler part will help you. And also it helps to enforce consistency. I think this is the most of the reasons why people will use linters for that, because when you're working at a big company, like maybe a team of 5 or 6, so when you are committing to the same code base, you have to ensure that everyone coding style at least is similar, right? You can't like you are having like very famous discussion about you are using tabs or spaces for the spaces for the functions or something like that. So most common things, if you are writing JavaScript, you will see ESLint. I guess most people are using that for JS to auto-fix spacings and semicolons and naming conventions or something like that. So if you're using Java, I'm not sure you're using check style or something like that. Yeah, so it will do the similar thing to ensure that if you have defined something rules in the company, so you will make sure that it will following the company's style. And yeah, robocall for Ruby. So there's also something more in different languages that helps you to do something like that. And the most important thing is it actually saves time, because like debugging is a very long awaiting process. You have to check. You can check less things when there are bugs found on your project or on your application, and you know what needs to be checked. I mean, you know that the linter helps you to filter out a lot of things. So if you set the rules properly, and you don't have to take care of if there are any problems about the generics or any problems about if there are any missing return types or something like that. So it helps you save a lot of time instead of keep finding threading problems in Swift, which is very common nowadays for recent years because of Swift concurrency. Yes, so in Swift, there are actually 3 ways for now, until now. So if you have heard about the previous talk about talking about doing a first commit in Swift format, yeah, that's something new for doing something so in the default Xcode. So originally, Swift compiler helps you to check the syntax already. Yes, so most of the job, I mean, in the most of the cases that when you're writing programs, so you can do it from the compiler. So it takes care of like 85 to 90% of the cases that you are using. So another part will be SwiftLint. So if you are doing iOS apps, or maybe you are using Vapor as doing backend application development, so SwiftLint will be something very handy. Or maybe you are doing some executables or command line tools, then you will use SwiftLint. And Swift format is something new added to Xcode. So it's open source, but most of the usage are only in Xcode. So let's talk about how SwiftLint actually works, because our topic of today is talking about SwiftLint and SwiftSyntax, right? So SwiftLint mainly defines the rules in a YAML file, which called the green word. Yeah. So you define the rules inside, and they have some predefined rules by default, and which helps you to prevent, like they have default, like you can't have a line more than 150 characters， 就是你第一句的编程语言不能多于150个英文字母这样子 ，something like that. And by default is created, and of course you can actually modify it or something like that. So for SwiftLint, it's something do it in runtime, which is different from the thing you do it in compiler. Compiler, when you build it, so it will check it in compile time. So SwiftLint is doing in it's doing in build time. It's not runtime, sorry, build time to check if there are still any errors in the code. So let's take a very simple example. So in case, if we would like to make sure that there are spaces between the colons and the values. So from if you have defined a rule, so when you have you'll see the incorrect code part is, so for the name, so when you see the correct code, there's a very big difference is you have to make sure that there's a space before the 1. So you define the rule, something like that. So when you build it with a project with SwiftLint, so SwiftLint will find that, oh, there's some kind of problems of your spacings and something like that. So they will tell you that there's a warning or error defined on how severe your problem is, and then they will actually do that. And why SwiftSyntax then? If SwiftLint can actually do something like this, so it actually provides a much more faster and accurate way to do that, because Apple has actually, if you have studied computer science, there's something called abstract syntax tree, which actually helps you to analyze the code in a tree that you read in different layers of structures. Okay, so if you're trying to enforce that with a return part with an empty line, so this kind will be an incorrect code, because like you have to have a space empty line above the return. So there is some kind of statement syntax in Swift syntax package, which helps to ensure that there is you have to have a space line, or else there will be an error. So in the correct look this way, so they will warn you, and then when you add a space between the variables and the return statement, then there will be a check passed. Okay, so before we talk about basics of SwiftSyntax, so we can actually try to see something through it. So this is the abstract syntax tree explorer. So this is an example that I'm going to show later. So you may see that the right side is a bit complex, because the thing is the Apple has defined the names like quite bad, actually, personally think. So what you're going to do is to break it down into different layers of stuff, which has there is a import declaration you will see on the screen, which actually tells that you're importing foundation. I guess that's most common for Swift, because you have to use the basic standard libraries and stuff. Yeah, and this website can help you to actually look what you are doing. So if there's an else statement, so the closures inside will be a code block, which actually returns Tommy. Okay, so let's go back to here. But hey, oh wait, I got my network. Sorry for that. Yeah, so this is a very simple function. Wait, why is okay? So this is a very simple function. So you import foundation and get a name. So if you want to have a last name, then you will return a string with Tommy Han, which is my name. And if it's false, then it will return Tommy. Very simple, right? So you don't really want to actually take a look at those names, right? I don't think we have to look that much, but of course, as a reference, you can see it in the documentation. But in most things, the SwiftSyntax will dissect the functions, I mean the file, into different parts. The most common ones will be listed in here, so have a look. So import foundation will be called as import declaration syntax, which that's you import a library or a package, and the Swift syntax will know that, oh, there's some package you have actually imported. And they will check based on your rules that, oh, you can't, if you set some rules like you can't import foundation, then there will be an error on this one. And then there is a function name. So the function keyword, and with the function name, and there's a parameter and the return type. So actually, SwiftSyntax does this with only two things. The function declaration syntax, which includes help you to get the name to ensure that the name is consistent. And the second thing is the function parameter clause, which is with last name. That's the parameter that's needed for the function, right? So it helps to declare, to check if the name is correct, or maybe there are some other errors or something like that. And the function declaration syntax will also handle the return type, which I showed just now. There will be a return statement, which is returning the string. And the third part will be the code block. So you created a function, then you are going to run something, some logic inside. So from the code snippet we just saw, so if you want the name with last name, then you return Tommy Han, which is me. And if you don't want it, then you will return Tommy. So the SwiftSyntax will check if the code block inside is correct or not, if there are any code blocks inside. So they will use code block syntax to have a look on that. So without further ado, so let's try a very short demo on linting rule about how actually linting works inside SwiftLint. Okay, so this is the most dangerous part in every single talk. So yeah, so I suspect there is example code which actually for testing SwiftLint inside SwiftSyntax. So for easier testing, I actually mock the core out to check on to ensure that the SwiftLint is working as expected. So in my case, so there are a few things actually. Let me have a look. Is it a bit too small for you guys, or I can enlarge it if needed? Give me 1 sec. So I actually created 2 tests to ensure that to check the rules. So the first one would be large classes. So that means it's a bit too large. Okay. Okay. So there are actually two tests which will show that the SwiftLint actually knows from SwiftSyntax to check on the large classes, which is very common in SwiftLint, which is if you have a class which has more than 300 lines, then it will warn you that your class is too big. Please separate it with extensions, or we separate to a new file. So it helps to check on that. And another rule will be there are too many parameters.